For many New Yorkers, Wednesday the 7th of August of 1974 started off as a normal day. Workers commuted to their offices, yellow taxis flooded the streets of the city, and the complicated dance of metropolitan life picked up its pace. But for those citizens who happened to walk near the newly erected World Trade Center, their ordinary morning would soon be interrupted. Back then, the now famous Twin Towers were still under construction and only partially occupied. Even in that state, however, the architectural marvel was already one of the tallest buildings on the face of the earth, standing at more than 400 meters high above the ground. And somewhere floating along the rooftop of such a giant on that Wednesday morning, people noticed a black speck. Too large for a bird and too slow for a plane, it wasn't long until a whole crowd of people started forming below the strange sight to watch that small spot on the sky moving along from one tower to the other. The spot was a man walking a tightrope between the two towers, with no harness, no safety net, just certain death 400 meters below him. This is his story. Philippe Petit was born in France to a military pilot and his wife. Now, the boy was clearly too badass for school, so he never did well in it, instead focusing on developing superior skills such as juggling and magic tricks, which he would then exploit to make a living as a street performer in the streets of Paris. Now, it wasn't long before young Petit discovered his passion for high wire, learning from a fellow Czech madman, and later he included this newly acquired skill as part of his street performances. But Petit soon grew tired of performing for pampered tourists, and he strove to step up his high wire game. It was then, when he was only 17 years old, while waiting at a Parisian dentistry's waiting room, that's kind of what you do at waiting rooms, that the ridiculous idea of walking along the Twin Towers occurred to him. He had seen the building as a concept drawing on a magazine cover at the dentistry, because of course it wasn't built yet back then. And the man became so obsessed with the idea that he literally just tore off the page of the magazine under the guise of a fake sneeze, of course, and just got up and left the dentistry. Zero given. He would have a sore tooth for a couple more weeks, but now he also had a ridiculous dream and an even scarier ambition. Now, of course, one does not simply turn up at the tallest buildings in the world, lays down a tightrope between them and starts walking across them like it's just a normal Saturday evening. Mainly because the buildings weren't even there at that point. But of course, even people with balls like Petit's aren't crazy enough to just go into this without preparing first. So, how did he prepare? Well, more illegal, death-defying stunts, of course. In 1971, Petit performed his first famous high rope walk when he crossed the two towers of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, 68 meters high above the ground. Again, with no harness or safety net, as you do. And later in 1973, he would take this one step further, puns for days, when he walked between the pylons of the Sydney Harbour Bridge in Australia, this time 134 meters high above sea level. Now at this point, any normal human being would be like, screw it, close enough, but not Petit. The big stunt would take over 6 years of planning and preparation from 1968 to 1974, and had things gone down even the slightest bit differently, the world may have never seen a man walk a tightrope across the Twin Towers. Indeed, Petit and his small group of demented friends who were insane enough to support his goals had to pull off a hitman-level scheme to get into the building and set everything up in preparation for the walk. Because I mean, you can kind of imagine it's not very easy to sneak into the tallest skyscraper in the world, let alone carrying with you 61 meters of steel cable. In the 3 months prior to the performance, the small group took more than 200 trips to the building site to take different measurements of the building, the wind, and other variables, even riding a helicopter to give themselves an idea of where they would secure the cable. During these 200 visits, the team dressed up as construction workers, reporters, and even architects to get past security and carry the equipment they needed to the top floor. At one point, they almost messed everything up when Petit stepped on a nail and injured his foot. But wearing crutches for a couple weeks was apparently enough of a recovery for the guy. And what once seemed like an impossible feat was now closer than ever. On the day of the performance, one group dressed up as architects managed to sneak in a bow and arrow in one of those blueprint cardboard tubes that you see, which they would use to pass a cord between the two towers. They would then slowly build up on this cord with the steel cable using heavier and heavier lines, which had been brought by another group who had been hiding for hours in one of the top floors under a tarp. And if you think that the story can't get any more ridiculous, you're wrong. Because simply walking along the twin towers was too boring for Petit. Instead, the performance lasted 45 minutes and involved him walking along the towers at least 8 times. During these 45 minutes, there was a point at which policemen climbed to the rooftop to try to arrest Petit. But he just laughed at them because he knew that they couldn't do anything except watch until he was done. In fact, Petit got so comfortable during the performance that at one point he even just laid down on the cable and started talking to a bird above him. Then, after 45 minutes, it started to rain and Petit decided it was time to go. Naturally, he was arrested by the police. But if you take a look at the pictures, even the policeman who escorted him to jail couldn't help but smile at the man's audacity. They even had Petit sent to hospital to check if he'd gone mad. But when they discovered that he was completely sane, he was instead charged with disorderly conduct and trespassing. In the end, the charges were lifted and Petit was condemned instead with organizing an aerial performance for free for children in Central Park, which he described as the most beautiful punishment I could have received. From that point on, Petit became a hero and a living legend, and his story has been taken to the big screen on 2 occasions, even winning an Oscar in one of them. When asked about why he attempted the walk, he simply said, "If I see 3 oranges, I have to juggle, and if I see 2 towers, I have to walk." In fact, to this day, the man still has one walk in his bucket list, as he plans to walk across the Grand Canyon someday. If he'll ever succeed, we'll probably never know. At least not until we see him on that tightrope. So there you have it. The man is really a legend, and a bunch of films have been made about his feats that really do make them justice, unlike this YouTube video. So if you're still intrigued, I highly recommend you watch The Walk and the documentary Man on the Wire for more on this amazing story. But as always, I do hope you have learned something new. If you did make it this far into the video, mad respect. Thank you for watching another episode of Pointless History. If you like what you see, please consider supporting the channel by liking, commenting, and sharing the video. And also, don't forget to subscribe for more ridiculous stories every Friday. And yeah, Until then, I'll see you soon. Peace.